A few weeks ago, I asked you guys if you could create any Pokemon ability, what would you make? And some of the responses came back and were very similar to abilities that already exist. And I was like, huh, that's interesting. I guess not everyone has all 310 abilities memorized yet. So in this video, we're going to talk about 10 abilities that I think are so often forgotten that it's incredibly unlikely for you to know all of them. So grab something to keep score, and let's see how many you know. Tangled Feet is an ability that boosts a Pokemon's evasiveness if it's confused. Overall, this isn't a bad ability. Not great, but at least it doesn't actively hinder you. It's not exactly the most memorable either though, because, well, really, are you even going to notice that you dodge things better when you're confused? Probably not. Tangled Feet was first introduced in Gen 4, where it was given to Chatot, the Pidgeyline, and Spinda. Because it's so old, and because Pidgey is so ubiquitous in Heart Gold and Soul Silver, which I'm assuming you've played, you probably saw this ability pop up quite a few times, but never bothered to remember what it does. I probably wouldn't have bothered including it in this video, because I at least had a vague memory of using a Pidgeot with Tangled Feet in my first playthrough of X, and I was pretty sure that many of you would also have this same similar vague memory. But just this last week, I pulled a Spinda card from a Paradox Rift booster pack. And wouldn't you know it, it had Tangled Feet. So it was then that I just knew I had to talk about it in a video somehow. The Motor Drive ability makes it so that a Pokemon will take no damage when hit by an electric-type move, and instead will have its speed stat boosted. When it was first introduced, it was the signature ability of Electivire. But I personally didn't use an Electivire in Gen 4 because at the time I had no friends to trade with to evolve my Electabuzz. In the next generation, it was given to the Blitzel line as an ordinary ability, and Emolga as its hidden ability. But I never used these Pokemon in White or White 2, so I didn't get to see this ability in action. Maybe I could have had an opportunity to see it on Zebstrika, since Elisa has one with Motor Drive in White 2. But by that point, I already knew my type matchups pretty well, and I wasn't about to use an electric-type move on an electric Pokemon. Because the Pokemon that get Motor Drive are either hard to get, or just overshadowed by better options, I'd bet that not many people are familiar with this ability, despite it being one of the oldest on this list. The Sniper ability causes a Pokemon's critical hits to be powered up even further, which by the numbers just means that it doubles the crit hit damage boost. But not many viable strategies rely on trying to get a bunch of critical hits in, and definitely not any that I've personally used. It's not really a bad ability, but it's not great either. Sniper is a possible ability of the Skorupi line, Beedrill, the Spearow line, the Remoraid line, and the Spinarak line. But the Pokemon that I most often associate this ability with is Kingdra. When I was playing through Omega Ruby back when I was around 13 or so, I decided that I wanted to challenge myself and try my first ever Nuzlocke. But as an extra challenge, I also imposed a nickname memorization challenge for myself. All of my encounters in this playthrough had to be named after elements of the periodic table, in order. So my starter Torchic was hydrogen, my Zigzagoon from 101 was helium, and so on. Yes, I know it's incredibly nerdy and lame, but I eventually went on to get a chemistry degree, so what else could you really expect? Towards the end of the game, I caught a Seadra that I specifically remember naming Erbium. And of course, I quickly evolved it into a Kingdra. And Erbium's ability was Sniper, which explains why I have some familiarity with this ability, even though I only ever saw it on the summary screen. I don't remember it coming in handy too much, but that's probably because there's no extra pop-up to let you know when it takes effect. But I definitely know that Erbium had it. If you're familiar with this ability, I'd say it's because you recognize it as the hidden ability of the Sobble line, which, let's face it, has the best thematic connection since Inteleon is literally a sniper. This ability really just came out 4 generations too early. I feel like if anyone learned about Inteleon having Sniper as an ability, it would be super easy to remember by association. But I personally never used one, and I'd bet that not many of you guys did either. A Pokemon with the Stall ability will always be last to use its moves. In more technical terms, a Pokemon with Stall will make its move last out of all moves used in the same priority bracket. There are a few moves that this ability is actually good for, such as Assurance, which will have double the power if you've already taken damage in the same turn, or Payback, whose power doubles if you're moving second. And when I was first researching Stall, I thought that maybe it would be good for something like Revenge as well, but I came to find out that Revenge is actually already -4 priority, so using Stall with it won't really do much. But that's totally okay, because the only Pokemon that can have Stall, Sableye, can't learn Revenge anyways. It's widely accepted that you probably don't want to run a Stall Sableye, because its hidden ability Prankster is just much better. Much better. Paired with the fact that Sableye is a version-exclusive Pokemon and is something you probably don't want to use in a casual playthrough just because it's not all that strong, its outclass signature ability is a likely candidate to end up being forgotten. The ability Filter was introduced in Gen 4 as a signature ability of the Mime Jr. line. The Filter ability makes it so that Pokemon take reduced damage from super effective attacks. I vaguely remember seeing this ability on a Mr. Mime I caught like 15 or so years ago in Heart Gold, but then I proceeded to never use Mr. Mime again, so I wasn't coming across Filter all that often. Plus, now knowing Mr. Mime is pretty universally hated, I doubt many other people were going out of their way to use them or their signature ability either. Or, it would be their signature ability if it weren't for Mega Aggron and Revavroom. I'll be completely transparent here and let you know that Mega Aggron was actually my Mega of choice when I played through Omega Ruby, and yet I still didn't know about Filter. That's because to even see this ability on Mega Aggron, I would have to go into the summary screen during battle after I've Mega Evolved, which is just not something I did very often. I doubt that many other casual players like myself actually cared that much about the abilities of Mega Evolutions, so it's pretty unlikely that you'd know about Filter from your Aggron. As for recognizing it from Revavroom, Filter is only its hidden ability, and that's really not the easiest thing to get your hands on when you're first playing through Scarlet and Violet. And plus, its other ability Overcoat is actually pretty good for a casual playthrough. The Pickpocket ability allows a Pokemon to steal the held item of any attackers that make contact with it. I included this ability in the list because of a comment by Ice Cream Work on my last abilities video. Ice Cream Work suggested that we have an ability that acts like Trick whenever an opponent attacks you with a direct contact move. While Pickpocket isn't technically the same as Trick because you can't transfer your item onto an opponent with it, it's still close enough to warrant mentioning here, and this comment is actually the one that gave me the idea for making this video. Pickpocket as an ability is not bad by any means, and because it activates after Thief and Covet, you can effectively never have your item stolen if you have this ability, with a few caveats that we won't really go into detail with here. This ability was introduced in Black and White as the hidden ability of the Seedot and Sneasel lines, yet for some reason it's listed first in the ability index list for the Black and White abilities. That's kinda weird since there are several other Unova Pokemon exclusive abilities that they probably could have listed first instead, but oh well, I'm not gonna question the Pokemon Company. Pickpocket was later given to the Binacle and Impidimp lines as their hidden abilities, yet it wasn't until Gen 9 that we got a Pokemon with Pickpocket as its ordinary ability, that being Shroodle. Not Graphii, just Shroodle. Considering the niche use cases of this ability, and the fact that it's almost exclusively a hidden ability, with the exception of just one very weak first stage Pokemon in the most recent games, it's no wonder it isn't super remembered. The ability Steelworker powers up Steel-type moves. But hold on, I hear you saying. The Steel type is one of the best defensive types in the game. Surely an ability that buffs their damage output because they stay on the field so long is a good thing. Why have I never heard of it? And, well, I'd have to agree with you, Steel types are great, and this ability would be very good if a Steel type had it. No, the only Pokemon that gets this ability is Dhelmise. Dhelmise learns 6 different offensive Steel type moves, with the highest base power of one of those being 80, with the exception of Heavy Slam and Gyro Ball, which depends significantly on the target's weight and speed respectively. A minimum 120 base move is nothing to scoff at, but taking into account that Grass Ghost is a pretty mid-defensive typing for a very slow Pokemon, and that Dhelmise is a relatively late and rare encounter that's often outclassed by Pokemon at that stage in the game, it's no wonder that people often overlook it and its signature ability. Because it's so small, it's also no wonder that people often overlook the subscribe button at the bottom of this video. Come on, you're already this far in, so are you not entertained? Neuroforce powers up a Pokemon's super effective moves even further, which in more concrete terms just means that its super effective moves are powered up an additional 25%. This seems like a pretty good ability, so why do I think that it's just not very well known? Well, the main reason is that it's only been given to one Pokemon that can only be used in one single game, Ultra Necrozma. I just learned myself a few years ago that you can even use this form of Necrozma in the Ultra games for yourself. And when I learned that, I wasn't really keen on doing much research into its ability, and I doubt that many other people were either. At the time though, I wasn't as diehard about the series as I am today, so maybe I'm the odd one out. I'm sure some of you did end up using Ultra Necrozma just for the novelty once you learned you could do it, but I bet just as many of you had no idea that this was even possible. Because Neuroforce has only ever been given to Ultra Necrozma and can only be seen in the summary screen during battles, it's no wonder that most players have never even heard of, much less remember this ability. Pokemon with Propeller Tail ignore the effects of Pokemon's moves and abilities that draw in moves. So, for example, if you have Propeller Tail, you don't have to worry about your move being redirected by moves like Rage Powder or Follow Me, or by abilities like Storm Drain or Lightning Rod. With Rage Powder Amoonguss being all the rage in the meta for a while now, which, if that's wrong, please don't grill me in the comments, I am not a competitive player, it doesn't seem like this ability would be too bad. The downside is, though, that Propeller Tail is the signature ability of Arrokuda and Barraskewda. While these fish Pokemon are honestly some of the best when it comes to battling, or at least they were when it came to the Sword and Shield meta, this ability is hardly ever used compared to their much better Swift Swim ability. The only thing really going for this ability on these Pokemon is that it matches their theme very well. Arrokuda and Barraskewda are basically fish missiles. Fishels, if you will. So an ability that is basically just a homing mechanism allows for some pretty strong memory associations to be formed, assuming you even see this ability on them in the first place. Mega Launcher is an ability that powers up pulse moves, but the text for this ability in previous generations also mentions that it powers up aura moves. So surely a Pokemon that's notorious for its aura would have an ability like this. Something like Lucario, right? Well, let's be honest, if this was Lucario's ability, then it probably wouldn't be in this video, now would it? No, this ability is actually the signature ability of Clawitzer and Clauncher, two very mid-water types. Though despite them being a relatively bottom-of-the-barrel choice for most folks, they do at least get every move that's boosted by this ability, with the exception of Origin Pulse, which is the signature move of Kyogre. At the very least, it is the ability of Mega Blastoise, but since we haven't been able to Mega Evolve since 2019, and thankfully Legend ZA is changing that for us very soon, this ability has fallen even further into obscurity. Well, how many of these abilities did you know about? Post your score in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.